2, 3. Mulai, Mi Fendi.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 1. We'll present our material about early American literature in the world. Before we start our presentation, let us introduce ourselves. My name is Shafil Effendi Syam. Then there is Sita Sukmaningsih. The third is Irma Harmin. And the last is Wirna Cahyani. So let me start from the first material. It is about contact zones and extended scales. There are 4 important figures from these materials. There are David Shields, Roger Williams, Edward Watts, and Mary Rowlandson. David Shields. David Shields, in his presidential address to the Society of Early Americanists in 2001, described the pedagogical situation as being as predictable. Shields' point was not that such canonical authors were not worth studying, but that the fetishization of such writers as the epitome of an American spirit effectively foreclosed a wide range of other intriguing writers that would enhance the scope and interest of this early Americanist culture sphere. Roger Williams. Roger Williams, publishing in 1644 during a visit to London, The Bloody Tenet of Persecution, for cause of conscience, a defense of absolute liberty of conscience. This book produced such uproar that Parliament ordered all copies of it to be burned, with Williams himself avoiding the death penalty because he was already on his way back home to Providence Plantations. Edward Watts. Edward Watts and others have done important pioneering work in this regard, but their efforts have been hampered by a reluctance among early American scholars to understand Winthrop and others within a post-colonial context. This has come about partly because such a framework would raise the specter of a depredation of Native American peoples by the Puritan exiles. Mary Rowlandson. Women writers such as Mary Rowlandson has had the effect interrogating the linear theology where the early American writers tended to be read proleptically with Benjamin Franklin, for example, too often understood to be an avatar to the liberal individualism. Then there are 3 of branch of influence. It is early American literature, New England, and Civil War. Early American literature. Early Americanists often preferred to be perpetuate the legend of cultural scantness of evidence, as Murdoch's narrator terms it, so that the perimeters of their field stay pristine and contained, as well as remaining readily subordinated to the conventions of a retrospective academic ordering. Early American literature has always been read historically. New England. In 19th century, New England writers had become canonized as a template for American literature as a whole. Many critics have subsequently pointed out the social hierarchies implicit in forming the fictions of Hawthorne and Melville. Widespread reaction against the forces of modernization led to the religious Great Awakening in New England during the first half of the 18th century. Civil War. Just as many American post-revolutionary novelists portrayed Britain as a natural, cruel parent, so Pratt's novel organizes its discourses of family sentiment around a representation of civil war as a transgression against the laws of nature. Nature herself lies bleeding in thy shore, laments Corbett, and there the inhuman mother has flung the dagger with her own barbarous hand into the bowels of her child.
Second material is the classical counter-narrative. First, American literature beyond its traditional focus. It was focused on New England. This allows for both regional and philosophical variation in the demarcation. Second, the classical idiom of 18th century American literature. It introduced a playful dimension, art in which the earnestness of moral or religious teaching is balanced in or supplemented by an emphasis of ludic rhetorical form like Mother Bow's Bells poems. The third part of the problem correlating questions of aesthetic with an early American literature. It was an ingrained assumption that aesthetic functions were necessarily Interwoven with that, Edward Cahill termed a library of imagination, the work of materialists. The word, despite of the popular traditional in the American studies, American colonies such as Christian culture, the work of materialist enlightened philosophers such as Hope, Gibbon, and Voltaire. It was circulated widely in America. The effect of patriotic nationalism, the appropriation of cultural figures from the revolutionary era for the purpose of patriotic nationalism has also affected to Benjamin Franklin's literary contribution. He was known for his autobiography, where he aligned himself to rise, fame, and, her, and the future US state from colonial supervillains to political independence. That's all. Thank you.
Novels from Atlantic Asia. There are 4 quotes. First book issue. The New England colonies are often regarded as the American literature because of the massive immigration to Boston in the 1630s. But the first book printed in Pennsylvania was a German language book. Pennsylvania also published the highest number of books of any other colony before the American Revolution. The second is political developments. Political developments eventually make English a lingua franca as well as literary language in the colonies. From 1696 to 1700, there were approximately 215 separate publications produced by publishers in the American colony. At the time, part of America literature was pamphlets and writing extolling the benefits of colonialism to European readers and the colonies. The next is religious strife. The religious classes that foster settlement in America were also the theme of early writing. And the last is new thinking. Throughout the 18th century, writings in the United States shifted from the Puritan ideas of Winthrop and Bradford to the forces of human thought and rational thought, because human mind can understand the universe through the laws of physics. Thank you.
So the last material is Thomas Paine and Universal Order. There are 4 points. That is Thomas Paine in British Colony in North America, phenomenal book Common Sense, Role of Literature in Common Sense, and the last is British Colony in North America. So, Paine was born in Norfolk, England in 1737 to a Quaker family, but he always enjoyed a difficult relationship with his native country. He worked for a while as a tax collector in Sussex, but typically enough, he lost this position by agitating for an increase in pay for excisemen. He then moved in 1774 to America, where he came to fame through the publication of Common Sense and by fighting as a soldier for the cause of American independence. Thomas Paine himself is better known as the founding father of the United States because of his phenomenal writing, Common Sense, which sparked the spirit of the colonists in America to be free from the grip of British rule. Thomas Paine's book opened the eyes of the people, especially the American people during that time, that Britain was oppressing its colonies in America and emphasized that the colony would gain nothing if it remained under British rule. The publication of the Common Sense meant that it was time for the colony to gain independence and establish their own government. This is what Thomas Paine believed as an accomplished thinker, statesman, and writer. With his dramatic rhetorical style, Paine gave a revolutionary spirit with various statesmen in his work. For example, in the sentence, what is more valuable is an honest human being in the midst of society and before God than the crown oppressors who have ever lived. And in order to convince the American people that independence from Britain was a must, Paine attacked the country's monarchy system. He stated, "For all human beings who are basically equal, no one has the inheritance right to determine that his own family is always better than others." It's ironic to see where the revolutionary came from and whom he was fighting. Thomas Paine himself was born in England in 1737 to a family that owned a corset company. After working for a while in his father's business, Paine became more interested in becoming a sailor. Thank you.
So that is the presentation of our group about early American literature in the world, and thank you very much.